But as you come back around from behind there, Sagittarius and Scorpio, those are their own characters in the story of timeline of 10,000 years here, plus Antarctica showing in the 1660s, which shouldn't be. But if you were to come around here, I'm looking at 5 characters of time, representations of each of 2,000 years plugged into the greater message. Why are they gods and why are they? Because there's a larger cycle above that. So both of those are meshed together. But the information was encoded and only known by some of the priests. So it's a dual layer meaning of what you're seeing, each one of those. So obviously they had just changed in age, because if Osiris is mummifying, the energetic signature for those 2,000 years encapsulated in that representation of those 2,000 years. Now this one is 1661. And you can see the different times of the year. So winter, summer, and this is what they're looking at from our vantage point from Earth during this time of the solstice, the 21st. We'll come to that lowest, shortest day of the year, northern hemisphere. It will appear in the sky that it stays static for a few days, and then it will rise again on the 25th. The sun's moving forward now again. Starting every day from now, will get longer and longer by 1 minute approximately. Some days jump 2 minutes depending on which month you're in, but most times it's about 1 minute per day. So think about just in context. That's more like an Easter reference. The sun dies on a day, it stays dead for 3 days, and then it rises and begins again. That is an Easter reference rate, but it's in Christmas time. And there's always been a lot of talk about months being in the different months than they are, that we are off by 2 months or so. Plus, there used to be a 13-month calendar. That would make us off by 3 months. So January, February, March, and then you come into April, and that's the actual Easter time right there. So that makes more of a sense for an Easter representation of going into the grave, coming out alive after 3 days, and then, Hame Cepharium Stellatum Boreale Antiquum, 1661. Cancer is a lobster. Cancer is a lobster. Do you see it? If you don't worry. A lot of people don't really follow the heavens as closely as they used to. And I'm not talking about astrology, which is, well, one of the sciences, believe it or not, back in the early 1700s, right when this map was stellar, star map, right around the year 1700, they diverged and divested the two what were combined sciences of astronomy and astrology both. Astronomy tells you your position in the heavens, like where you're triangulating at, where are you physically. The astrology was telling you where the energies were and how the energies was flowing. And, we're going to intersect. So you got a pot of energy, whatever it is, faster moving, slower moving, and our Earth and our solar system moves through this. They've been tracking this on 1,000-year time frames, though, which is interesting. Like they know when we move around through the different constellations, that there's energetic changes, because if you look dead center right there, I hope you can see the mouse on this one. I have to use my hand. Don't have a mouse. Plugged into camera. This what looks like a river here. That is a Birkeland current. And anywhere that you see, especially coming out of Pisces, these currents here, those are like dual Birkeland currents coming into what you would consider a star sign. Now, the Chinese also talk about the Beidou Qixing, which is the Big Dipper, that there's 2 Birkeland currents going in. And the way that they are powering into the center of the Big Dipper, obviously from our viewpoint, that is the seed point of consciousness of another Birkeland current that comes down and encapsulates our solar system. They actually talk about the Big Dipper being the seed point of human consciousness. It's called the Beidou Qixing, the cult of the Big Dipper. Got some Chinese stuff for you tonight as well. Bottom left, Cancer. Now, you and me and everybody else knows Cancer as the crab. Okay, this map is from 1661. They got the unicorn, obviously. Now, go with me here. There's a lot of things that have disappeared in history. If you're over 40 and planning to retire someday, the window to protect what you've built may be smaller than you realize. Here's a question most people never ask. Is your portfolio built for what's coming next? Many investors in their 40s and 50s discover they have little to no exposure to precious metals. That means their savings are largely tied to markets, policies, and paper assets with very little protection if conditions change. As retirement moves from someday to on the horizon, protecting what you've already built becomes just as important as growing it. That's where Noble Gold Investments comes in, helping investors reduce risk by adding physical gold to their portfolios. Right now might be a smart time to talk to noblegoldinvestments.com. No sales gimmicks, no pressure, just a strategy, clear answers built around your goals. That's 2030gold.com. And the January silver bonus, a 3-ounce American Virtues Independent Silver Round, available for new qualified accounts. Building your portfolio for the long term. That's 2030gold.com. Click on that link in the description box below. Do we even know if these things are real or not real? Because the representation of most of them, although if you go back into the Greek eras of giants and gods, etc., most of them are what we consider twins, a dog, a bear, goats, were things we're familiar with on the planet here. And then there's a unicorn. Although they do have dragons too. But again, were dragons real or not real? And then you look at this here and you say, well, what about, why is that? So I'll zoom that in for you again. Canis Minor, Canis Major, Gemini right down there for you. Orion there, coming off the eastern horizon, probably right around now, around 8:30, a little after sunset. Why is it that back in 1661, Cancer, as we know it today, the crab was represented as a lobster? Did they not see crabs back then? Were crabs like, wow, not anywhere to be seen? That's the question. I mean, why did it change? So if you wide out back again onto to the hemisphere, what do we see? Cherubellums and different things. Scorpio, the scorpion's a scorpion. It's just wondering why these things have changed through history here in the last 400 years. And this is the southern view of it. See how the sky had moved? It moved slightly. So they had already mapped it out that, it moves this direction over the years. They've mapped out the stars, the energetics of what we consider the constellations over that long period of time. And this knowledge has been passed down. This might be 2,000-year-old knowledge or whatever it is that's been brought forward. But originally, all of this information about how long the great year is to move around is just to represent, this is just smaller cycles of the same thing. They're showing you the 2,000-year periods. They're not showing you the great year. But if you put those two together, you go, wow, they have the clock hands on this. We're just missing the explanation of what a clock is. And showing you the inner workings of the cogs, right? So they already had wired this thing out a long time ago. So I'll bring you to the modern representation of what we see Cancer, the star sign. Why is it so different than now it's a crab? Gemini's the same, Leo's the same, Canis Minor is the same, Hydra's the same, well, dragon, snake, all the same. Just this one has changed. The reason? I don't know. That's the reason I'm bringing the information. If anybody has any information, almost all the references you're seeing in the Bible are talking about stellar positions or some sort of energies contained within the movements around. And here's the interesting thing, at least these 2,000 years plus going back, and to say that the ram, Pisces, the fish, even the bull, if you go further back, and even the lion, if you're looking back at Egypt. So at least we have about, let's see, you got lion, Taurus, or Leo and Taurus, excuse me. And then you got the ram, okay, and then we got that. So we're about 5. That's about 10,000 years of time that we're understanding here. So this one, I put a 1661. You can see in the bottom right corner, this also map series here. I go to a bunch of old map sites all the time. And as you can see, the constellations are right in the front there of what I was just referencing. Cancer at the top, 1661, which still shows the crab, but you saw on the other stellar maps, it was showing a lobster. So, this is the point, I think, of transition. Right in the late 1600s, they moved from the lobster into the crab. I still don't know why. I just don't. But they got with Leo the lion, and that would be more of a Sphinx type of thing if you're looking in that direction. And remember, we're going the opposite way around here. Um, so how many signs are we into it? So each one of those that you see, each one of those gaps, like Leo, Cancer, Virgo, etc., Scorpio, Sagittarius going down, those are about 2,000 years of time, each one of those segments there. So as you loop around, they're showing you one great year here, just in a different format without telling you it's a great year. Because I think Copernicus got in a lot of trouble. I think they would have burned you alive had you given this information that every one of those say that's going to rotate. That is the clock you're looking at. You see how it even rotates around. Now, what's also interesting is there's another dimension or another factor that's included in that on the horizon there. But that was even so secretive, they did not include it in here. But it shows you where the meridians are and these sort of things. Now, again, that date is from 1661. But what I really wanted to mainly point your attention to is look at the southern pole. They already had Antarctica mapped out. Wasn't supposed to be like that until the 1800s, right? That's the whole thing I keep finding on these older maps too, is Antarctica's there an enormous amount of times. North Pole also with multiple land masses. I noticed those two things in all these older maps. But on our way to that, I found this cool image here when I was doing some research about rainfall in Afghanistan over the last 5,000 years. That is a Russian helicopter coming by the previously intact Buddhas without, remember the Taliban blew those up, remember? Not even going to go there with this. But that's such a apropos shot too. Like this Buddha standing had stayed the test of time through thousands and thousands and thousands of years of armies. And then the Taliban come in and blew it up. So, something has changed energetically as well. Like some force has taken over to the point where nothing is going to be allowed to be harmoniously with you. Like you do what you do what we want. It is all complete overwhelm and forceful taking, and nothing else except my beliefs will stand. It's almost like the Highlander right now. There shall be only one. So anyway, I want to bring you back here into the Egyptian obelisk in Cleopatra's Needle. So this is from 1870, Metropolitan Museum of Art. They had a photo montage of Egypt, and I thought, that's pretty cool. Imagine just going to get a cup of tea, and then you rock up and you got the obelisk right here. And this is in the old town. Like, what's so interesting about it is everything from Egypt that we've seen is also, you get a pillar like that or an obelisk or something. It's like usually a massive temple complex everywhere, right? Like you just don't go and take photos around Egypt because every one of these obelisks is at a massive temple complex. But if we just step back into the 1870s, this is by itself. And you have to wonder how many of these have actually been moved out of their place up to the temples to make the perception of these only existed at the large temple complexes. This is by itself in the middle of nowhere. Now, if it was an electrical transmission tower or an electrical transmission device, you would want them further out. You would want to transmit the signal. So these make more sense for me as retransmission devices on a node somewhere out here by themselves in the countryside. And also another thing to notice, the watermark that's up that thing, it's probably about 15 feet up at the top of the house. You can see where it's more dark brown there. That for me looks like water had flooded through there and then receded. Not a great flood by any means, but a massive, like once in a 5,000 year flood or something came rolling through right there. Now, so interesting, they just built up around it. Like it became a wall itself. That's the wall of an interior of a home to like structurally, support it. Well, I'd do the same thing. I borrow the obelisk, but I'm wondering what the energy is inside. Like if you're living in a house, like how much extra banging energy are you getting off this ancient relic that used to be an electrical transmission point? Like our high tension wires that we see and have around here in the modern world is the equivalent of that without the wires. So in 1,000 years, if our electrical transmission towers were still there, but the wires had fallen down, but you just had the structure, would people build under it? It's already a prefab kind of house anyway, isn't it? The images, yeah, great year. Comments, 25,690 years. Yeah, 2160 times 12, or about 70 years per 1 degree, around that 360 degrees. Now, see, that makes sense. 365 for the day, but 360 degrees as they're measuring around objects, space itself, everything you're looking at, 360. but we have 365 for the calendar year, which is off about 5. It should mesh, right? Like if you're talking about cycles of a year that are repeatable, that have an exact number of days to it, and again, the calendar's been moved a couple of times. If there were 13 months, that would be very different as well. So you got all these different things that are like kind of laying up in here. Yeah, 12 houses, right? You know, Egypt, or excuse me, in China, you know, they're using horses and they're using dragons and you know, different types of things, pigs. We don't have those. Same but different. They were measuring the clock in terms of 2,000-year periods through the heavens as well, because they understood that seed point from the Big Dipper. That's what they were all about, was the Beidou Qixing. That's why the Sphinx is two different animals. Yeah, you know what I'm wondering? Because I'll tell you my personal stories of having traveled over to Italy and Greece, Turkey. What I kept noticing was when an age would change, they would break the noses and faces and break all the statues and knock the heads off and everything, kind of like we've done in the last 10 years or so. When you come to an age change, everything from the previous one must be destroyed. Chinese did it. Everywhere across Europe did it. You could see the rise and falls, crushing of castles. They always did it. Any kind of relics, ruins, got to be burned, melted down, started fresh with the new energies. The old doesn't remain and can't remain. So one thing I really noticed about all of that is every time you come into a noticeably different era, everything from the previous one was completely smashed and mashed to bits. China's very much the same. When you come in with a new dynasty, you burn everything to the ground and you start fresh. Well, again, is that a different energetic frequency and signature that they're following? Do the obelisks in cemeteries have a relevance? I don't have that answer, but I'd wonder that myself. If it works in certain settings, would it not work in other settings? And again, on the homes and the old mansions and all around these old, incredibly old buildings around that used to be these great cathedrals and things around in Europe, those were all stripped off either during World War I and II, or they removed all the copper that was across it. Sometimes you'll come across these old antennas that are still on the buildings across Europe if you're in the right place. But imagine that totally covered in metal. Not just covered in metal, but they molded either the copper gold or gold alum or something like this. But that was actually molded into the shape of the actual objects that are in there, that you can see the design coming down the obelisk, that the metal was molded in there. Because if you're looking at a circuit board, it's not just straight flat. There's little notches and things. So this is a three-dimensional representation in stone of what you consider a circuit board. But if that was tightly clean, incredibly clean, and like very tight tolerance, and you hammered metal into there precisely and covered that thing with a sheet of thin, whatever their alloy was, and each of those objects had a different resonance, because when I'm looking at the front of it, I'm looking at a microcircuit board here. You're transmitting electricity at that point. I am sure all that has been stripped off over the ages. Guaranteed. I mean, how difficult would it be to take the metal off the front of it? It wouldn't be. And then you wait a couple hundred years and then boom, it looks like that. I was always wondering a lot of, some of these stone objects that are out in the rain, they disappear real quick. Is that only a couple hundred years of weathering because the aluminum, or not, I wouldn't even say aluminum, but just the alloy they had around it was the protective cover for the stone. But that alloy that they had was also weather resistant, but it covered these things for thousands of years, and somebody finally came by and deconstructed them. This is the Temple of Augustus Caesar in Ankara, Turkey, Matson, 1935. So it's not often you see this picture here. It's a first for me. And since this is 1935, it gives you an idea of the archaeology at that time. They were trying to either restore or hide, like 1935. So notice the larger blocks on the bottom, which would be, but for me, it looks like the ones on the right are newer than the ones on the left. And for sure, the blocking that is on the right is all brand new construction, aside from a little bit of that square at the bottom with all the indentations in it versus what you see on the left. Again, it all looks rebuilt to a point. But for me, that structure and construction on the right definitely looks newer than, and hell, the one just because of the shadowing could be also with the identical blocks across. If that's all new. I mean, for us, it's all bricks, but a little bit bigger. And I'm wondering what it would look like today. I haven't done that much research on it to see. And when you're talking about the Anunnaki and these sort of thing, princes of large size, gods of thousands of years, lifespans. Relief of the banquet, Ashur Banipal Nive, and this is 660 or no 645 to 635 BCE. So we got to go back 2,600 years. And what do we notice? Somebody who's much larger in the center there. Now, the servants below are obviously smaller than that. So this is a person of great stature. I mean, physically stature. You know, we've seen the stories of even smaller humans next to these giants that are, well, Anunnaki is the best term I can put for that. And also, when you're looking further back in, let's go to Anubis mummifying Osiris, excuse me, flanked by Horus and Thoth. Again, these are energetic signatures. And what is the similarities between Leo and what do we see? Another lion, don't we? So again, the similarities between times, they're showing us there's a cycle in time here. If it was encoded in the Egyptians, it's also encoded in the modern astrology and astronomy as well. Like this is meant to be there forever. But also the energies, I do believe what we're also looking at here is 4 energies that have shifted. Times of different frequencies that allowed for different things to happen. Something died of the old world and was replaced. So if you were going to look just like we were at the front of the star signs, right here, you're looking at 5. If you don't look at them as gods in the picture, you're looking at 5 of the same periods of time. And what do I mean by that? So we see Cancer, Leo, Virgo. But as you come back around from behind there, Sagittarius and Scorpio. Those are their own characters in the story of timeline of 10,000 years here, plus Antarctica showing in the 1660s, which it shouldn't be. But if you were to come around here, I'm looking at 5 characters of time, representations of each of 2,000 years plugged into the greater message. Why are they gods? Why are they? Because there's a larger cycle above that. So both of those are meshed together. But the information was encoded and only known by some of the priests. So it's a dual layer meaning of what you're seeing, each one of those. So obviously they had just changed in age, because if Osiris is mummifying, the energetic signature for those 2,000 years encapsulated in that representation of those 2,000 years, whether it be marble statues of Greeks, further back in the Babylonians, what would it take its perception of? So if you had to, let's say Pisces, the year of the fish. Okay, so it takes a Christ consciousness, and the whole time these 2,000 years has just been about the representation of fish coming out of different clay vessels and multiplying and feeding villages. Okay, that is the fish and this representation of that energy. Well, Osiris, what kind of representation of energy would it have in the whole cycle here? So I'm looking at 10,000 years of time, also equivalent. So if you were to match those together, you're just looking at 25,000 year time calendars demarcated by 2,000 year intervals, and they're just taking different representations, whether it be Egypt or whether it be Greece. So here's the interior of it. Again, like these photos, I hadn't seen these before, so it was all new for me. I'm like, damn, I really haven't seen this. And I even went to Egypt. This must not have been found, or they were not letting people in there at the time. And the snakes, or would that be serpents? The Ouroboros, Hydra. You know, we start to see the same representation. I don't care where it is. But this was a close-up of going down in there. So at the very far end of the chamber, that's where that same image I showed you of Osiris on the bottom there, with the mummification. But going into the chamber, you see light, you see the sun on the left. Okay, so the changes in that current, the snake represents the Birkeland current that was known to the ancients at these energetic flows in space that are responsible for star formations. Like when you see a string of pearls of stars forming along a single chain, that's because electrically they're wrapping in and coalescing along that same chain. This is the same thing. We're looking at a chain coming out of the sun that affects the energetic pulse on this planet for 2,000 years at a time, tied to what is in the back. and as well that globe map would tie it in too. Like when you start to look at this and go, all right, well they understood quite a few things. So if they did understand quite a few things, then what did they leave us as clues for the past is the question. That's the whole thing. What is the known inside there? So I just showed you two cycles by two different cultures, thousands of years apart, marking and keeping that knowledge going for us. But why is more the question. And here we are in Egypt, 1864. Sphinx is pretty well covered up there, you know. That was like the thing they tried to change the face, messed it up. The symmetry is not there, and that's what was left. Apparently, a lot of tourists, you could climb anywhere. You could go on up the piers, nobody cared. I'm going to bring you over to Sanxing Dui, which is in, I visited this place also as on my way up to Xi'an, which is where all these pyramids are. So Sanxing Dui, they had this culture pops in for like 1,200 years, fully evolved, boom. It was almost like the Sumerian tales, just fully evolved everything, writing, art, mathematics, laws, all boom, just right in there. They're there for 1,200 years, boom, they just disappear. Completely gone. They were there, they were gone. And this segment also kind of fits in with something that had occurred, 3,000 years earlier in Sumeria. So kind of take a look at some of the wild statues that they have here, like bulging eyes and this sort of thing. Or was that energy coming in? Could also be another question thing about asking. And these faces too, they look very, you could almost say Tolmec-ish. Tolmec, not alien, Tolmec. So if you talk about that time, you're going back even 1,000 years before. So there seems to be this bring through of also from the Sumerians through the Olmecs and over into Sanxing Dui. And you have to wonder, where did it pop out of? And I climbed a fair few of these pyramids in China as well. Now, there's no ropes, gates. At least the time I was there, it's like 2006, 5. Like back then, it was really, when I say Wild West out in Xi'an, I really mean Wild West. Like there was no anybody up there. They were not this well maintained, and there was definitely not that much or that many people, and not that much like care given to it. It's like they re-terraced those, and it's sort of, I wouldn't say a fake one, but they really trimmed it up to make it very visible that it is a pyramid as a tourist attraction. And here's another one. Like those are rows of trees that are growing on the terraces as you look down. And if you go a wide view on Google Earth, go out near Xi'an or Shenyang, and you get, it looks like, circuit boards at certain times where there's 20 of these in a row. I was just talking about individual ones. Like this, for example, would be one that's just literally out in the middle of nowhere. Like I don't see any fences. I don't see anywhere for resting where people pull up. I don't see any big gates on it, like the big giant, wow, gate before you walk up to the pyramid. They're almost trying to mimic something out of, but when you get to these ones that are way out there, like you can just climb on them and there's no museum right there. It's really, you see it way over there and you ask your motorbike driver, take me over there. And then you go, wow, get up on there. These are the real ones you want to visit. Not the ones that have all the gates and museums. And you want to find these where they're really remote. Thank you for watching tonight. Hope you got something out of the video. Please share with your friends and family, and check out Kelly Kettle, where a very small amount of wood can boil and purify your water for any of you trekkers and hikers out there. I'll leave those links in the description box below.